podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
So it's day 5 here at Roland Garros. Welcome back to Tennis Unfiltered, the Roland Garros editions. Today it's just me. I had George with me yesterday. I'll have Calvin with me tomorrow, but it's just me, James Gray of iNews.co.uk and the iNewspaper, checking in with your review of day 4. It was quite a late finish last night because Djokovic, came into press just before midnight, I seem to remember. I can't actually remember now. It was very late and I didn't finish till 1:30, so I apologise if this is not in your feeds as early as it might be. I would say it wasn't a dramatic day, but there were moments of drama in it. That's my impression of it. I spent the morning, first of all, watching Calvin coach, kind of. He won't appreciate me saying that, but Patton and Cash were in first round action against Max Purcell and Ben Shelton, the very exciting and huge serving young American. They were up a set and a break, but unfortunately that was when Shelton and Purcell really got fired up, to be honest. The Shelton serve started firing and they were unfortunately beaten in 3 sets. They've not, I think they would admit, they've not had the kind of clay court swing like the grass court swing that they had last year. They will head to Surbiton now, where they've obviously got a fair few points to defend, so that'll be quite a big grass season for them, so best of luck. And then I headed eventually down to Suzanne Lenglen for Cam Norrie against Lucas Pouille, which as a match, to be honest, was a little bit underwhelming, but that was as much because Norrie came out the blocks incredibly well and played very well. I mean, he won the first set in 24 minutes. There was a bagel on the cards. He got as far as 5-love, and he played really, really well in that first half hour. Complete opposite to how he played against Benoit Paire when he was really scratchy in the early stages. It was just, I don't know. I mean, I asked him afterwards, what did you do differently? And he said, well, I don't know. He thought it was a bit slower because it was in the shade, and that helped him. When the quick conditions, sometimes you can find it difficult to adjust to. And I know he certainly prefers the kind of slower, hot, high bouncing conditions that you find in America, for example, and in places where he's done well before, like Indian Wells and Los Cabos and things like that. So that was more suited, but I think also he just played better. He was just feeling a bit better, and Paire is an awkward guy to play, and Pouille is a bit more conventional, and he didn't play brilliantly, to be fair. The crowd tried to get into it. It was a really great atmosphere, but they didn't have a lot to shout about, so it was difficult for them to get into it too much, to be honest. There was a moment of controversy, as sort of seems to happen in every Cam Norrie match these days. It's quite remarkable, really. He lunged for a drop volley by Pouille and appeared to get it and lob it over Pouille's head. Pouille stopped because he thought it bounced twice and then realised the umpire hadn't seen it or wasn't going to give it. So then he ran back and fired the ball long, and that brought up break point. And he had quite an extended argument with Ivaz Daraki-Moore, the Greek umpire, who was obviously unmoving. And, the replay showed it definitely did bounce twice, there's no question about that. Even Cam agreed afterwards. He said, I've just seen it on video, and it did bounce twice. I don't really know what that noise was. Probably on the TV guys setting up. Anyway, so Cam said, yes, it definitely did bounce twice, I now know. But he did say he didn't know at the time. He said, well, I wasn't sure. And, that's probably fair enough. And I think most players would probably agree, well, it's up to the umpire to make the decision. Pouille was pretty annoyed about it afterwards. Not with Norrie, but he said, umpires are allowed to make mistakes, but if they make a mistake, what happens? And if we make a mistake, we get fined $15,000 or whatever. So, it's kind of an understandable frustration, and this is something that players do keep saying. It's, we want umpires to be accountable. But, I mean, I think probably, if you introduce some sort of system where if the umpire gets, falls under a certain percentage of correct decisions, then, they get demoted or whatever. And I think actually what players would find is umpires get most decisions right. It's just that obviously the ones people remember are the ones they get wrong. It does kind of make a mockery of the fact that they don't use video replay, though. It would have taken, because the match stopped anyway for the best part of a minute while Pui argued about it. But if she had just said, all right, I'll have a look on the video, and, maybe like the challenge system, he can say, oh, can you video review that? It would have taken, not long if she had a little iPad and the producer could have put that replay up. It was up on TV almost immediately. And all it would have taken was one replay. It was pretty obvious from that. Just kind of seems obvious at this point. The ATP are going to go full automatic line calling quite soon at all ATP events. I don't see why they wouldn't say, well, at say Masters events or Grand Slams, obviously not in their remit, but I don't see why the top events wouldn't say, well, let's do video replay as well. So it seems like a no-brainer to me. The other big matches yesterday, Cam obviously threw at about the same time as Carlos Alcaraz, who beat Taro Daniel. I managed to balance myself and watch a bit of both. I actually watched the second set of Alcaraz, which is the one he lost on Chatrier. It was pretty windy on Chatrier all day. And I do think that, it wasn't windy in the grounds. I really do think that Chatrier just creates wind for whatever reason. But maybe that's just a conspiracy theory that bears no merit, but that's what I think. And, it was so windy that all the clay basically ended up at one end of the court, all the dust, that is. And it was, whipping up off the ground, creating these little swirls on the court. The ball was obviously moving in the air as well, quite unpredictably. And that kind of, reduced the gap between Daniel and Alcaraz, which in the first set had been very big. And Taro Daniel played reasonably well in the second set. But then I think Alcaraz lost another 3 games after that. He hit 26 winners in 2 sets. It was pretty remorseless stuff. And, it just proves that when he steps up a gear and finds his kind of rhythm, he really is an extremely good player. John McEnroe described him on Eurosport as truthfully a complete player. And he sort of wondered, has anyone at that age ever been so complete? He said, well, Pete could serve massive. Has anyone ever been able to serve as big as that when he first came on the scene? Probably not. But he didn't have much of a backhand. And he said something similar about Boris Becker. And it's true, really. Like, Alcaraz, his serving isn't perfect. McEnroe said he would give his backhand a B+, but B+ isn't bad. So yeah, it's hard to find chinks in the armour, and at the moment it looks like, because Novak Djokovic won last night in straight sets against Martin Fucsovics, we're still on course for that Djokovic-Alcaraz semi-final on the second Friday, and that is just going to be absolutely massive, and it will be fascinating to see how it pans out. Djokovic, as I say, he won last night in the night session. He wasn't entirely happy with life, I thought. The wind, he doesn't like the wind at the best of times. And the first set took an hour and 27 minutes, I think it was, in the end. And he won it in a tie-break, but he was made to work very hard by Fucsovics. I think also he just didn't play very well in that first set. And then he played a great tie-break, because he always does. He's an absolute king of tie-breaks. And then, again, like Alcaraz, after that, he only lost another 3 games in the last 2 sets of the match. But, he did spend best part of 3 hours on court, and Alcaraz didn't. I think it was only 2 hours 15. So, it was pretty straightforward. I think the challenge for Djokovic is going to be, well, I don't know, I would usually say conserving energy is what he needs to do, but actually what he said last night I thought was very telling. So he was asked again about the Kosovo stuff, which he was obviously criticised by the French Minister of Sport as well as a load of Kosovan politicians, and he said basically that he didn't need to say anything more. But he was asked by Matt Futterman of the New York Times whether a drama-free Grand Slam would be preferable. And he said, drama-free Grand Slam with a grin. And I don't think it can happen for me. I guess that drives me as well. And yeah, that kind of sums it up, really. He is someone who is motivated by the drama, and he kind of relishes it, and he loves that us against them kind of thing, or me against the world, really. Nole fam against the world, I suppose. And I've always said it's such an effective motivational tactic for any sports person. So I think that's what you saw, and it's the first time I've heard him really say it in such plain terms. Other great matches yesterday. Thanasi Kokkinakis beat Stan Wawrinka. That was obviously superb, and a fine match. Such a shame that the men's draw's oldest player didn't win back-to-back 5-setters, but he got pretty close, which is impressive for a guy who doesn't necessarily look like the fittest in the world. Griekspoor and Hurkacz also went to 5 sets, including a 28-point tiebreak. That was pretty remarkable, but Hurkacz came through it eventually. Bautista Agut was knocked out as well in 5 by Juan Pablo Varillas, who came from 2 sets down, in fact, to beat Bautista Agut. It's the same Varillas who took Felix to 5 sets here last year, so clearly he's got a bit of stamina, and that's the biggest win of his career, I would suggest, the world number 94 to reach the 3rd round, so congrats to him. On the women's side, brilliant to see Elena Svitolina come through, just as Elena Ostapenko couldn't. She was beaten, real surprise there. The American Peyton Stearns picking up a victory there. Ostapenko was typically bad-tempered in defeat, not at her opponent, at herself mostly, but it was, one of those things that slightly par for the course. Also watch out for Clara Tauson, by the way, who beat Leylah Fernandez in a really good match. She's obviously come through qualifying, but she's a really talented player, and I think a real threat in the draw to anyone who comes across her, frankly. She's got lucky loser Alina Evanesian in the next round, and then the winner plays Makova or Bagu, so I think Tauson will think it's wide open for her. There was one quite charged moment off the court in the women's draw yesterday. Aryna Sabalenka, she was asked, she was asked a very firm question by the Ukrainian journalist who is here about signing a letter to support Lukashenko, quote, in times when he was torturing and beating up protesters in the street, and then eventually showed up celebrating the new year with him. How is it possible that the potential world number 1 supports a dictator? And then Aryna interrupted her and said, I have no comments to you, so thank you for your question. And she said, the second question is, you keep saying that nobody supports the war. Nobody, but can you speak for yourself and say that I, Aryna Sabalenka, flatly condemn the fact that Belarus is attacking Ukraine with missiles and I want it to stop? She said, I've got no comments. So basically, you support everything because you cannot speak up. You're not a small person, Aryna, you can. And then the moderator intervened. And Aryna basically then said, you've got enough answers from me and I've got no comments to you. And the journalist said, it's all clear to us. Next question. It's pretty charged, and I kind of think, I understand what the Ukrainian journalist in question is doing and why she feels she needs to do it. I think at this point probably Sabalenka, like I said, she said the other day, I think was pretty brave and pretty forthright, and at this point she's probably said all she can say. Right, well, just moving on to Thursday, which is already actually underway here. I'm doing a feature today where I watch every point on Philippe Chatrier and try to write down what I learn. Make of that what you will, to be honest. You can read it on the eye. inews.co.uk, find me on Twitter, James Gray Sport, and that'll point you in the right direction, I'm sure. It means that I'm going to watch Giulio Zeppieri, the Italian, versus Casper Ruud. I'm going to watch Iga Swiatek, who's currently warming up in front of me. She's up against Claire Liu. Who else? Ons Jabeur against Oceane Dodin. And then in the night match, I was hoping to watch Holger Rune against Gael Monfils. And then Gael Monfils pulled out of the tournament at 11 last night, which desperately sad news. He's got what sounds like a really bad wrist injury that he basically played through to beat Sebastian Baez. And it means that they have instead put Alexander Zverev and Alex Molcan on the night match. They could have put Oceane Dodin and Ons Jabeur, a French player against a very popular global player, on, but elected not to, which, you know, they've still only had one night session here with a women's match in it. It's pretty weak. I think most people would agree. Yeah, not great. But that's all from me. I'll have Calvin tomorrow, hopefully, and we'll be able to talk all things Patent Cash, all things French Open, and maybe have a sneaky look ahead to the grass as well.
Sports Social Podcast Network.